Chag Sameach, and welcome to His Word Heals. This program is focused weekly on living in agreement with Yahweh's Word. This program is broadcast on HebrewNationOnline.com, MessianicLambRadio.com, and we have several videos on the His Word Heals playlist on the Messianic Lamb Network's YouTube channel. If you are blessed by what you hear, please consider supporting one of these stations by clicking the donate button on their website. You are also encouraged to visit our website at www.hiswordheals.com to download free Kindle edition books and a free MP3 of our Healing Scripture CD with Healing, Praise, Strength, Fear Not, and Psalms 91 Warfare Scriptures with background music. Happy Sukkot to all of you, and let's rejoice before Yahweh 7 days. We know from Leviticus 23 that Yahweh commands Israel to dwell in booths or sukkah, or temporary dwellings, for 7 days, starting the 15th day of the 7th month, as a memorial of when he brought them through the wilderness, or brought us through the wilderness, on our way to the Promised Land. Aren't these photos of Sukkot in Israel beautiful? Are we, those of us still living in the wilderness outside of the land of Israel, also obligated to dwell in or live in booths, meaning live outside in them for 7 days as well? Like, say, perhaps in Montana, where I live, or Alaska, or other places north of Israel. One of our first Sukkots, we had just bought some recreational property, put up a wall tent sukkah with a little wood-burning stove, some cots and sleeping bags, and we were doing Sukkot. Our son was about 7 years old, and it was great fun. We decorated it up, and we were all snuggled into our sleeping bags after dark, just about asleep, when the wind started to howl and the snow started to fly. The tent was flapping and rattling drastically. I asked my husband, "Are you sure you pounded all the tent stakes in really well?" In my mind, I could see the tent being rolled up in a ball around our little wood stove, bursting into flames and rolling down the valley in the wind. So we prayed. We were quickly considering putting out the fire and throwing our gear into the truck and heading back to the house. But before we did, we stopped and prayed. We said something like, "Abba, we are trying to honor your feast. Please stop the wind from howling and keep our tent stakes into the ground. Or let us know if you want us to go home. We just want to do your will. We want to honor you." Well, praise Yah, almost immediately the wind settled down to some light falling snow. We said a prayer of thanks and slept soundly the rest of the night. We don't always sleep outside during Sukkot anymore, especially during late Sukkots. This year our first snow was September 30th. We've come to the conclusion that the command to dwell in booths for 7 days based upon Scripture is likely mostly for those that are living in the land where it will be a balmy 70 to 80 degrees all week this week in Israel, but not necessarily mandatory for those of us still in the diaspora, in the wilderness, waiting to head to his promised land. So let's take a look at Leviticus 23:42 in the Interlinear Scripture Analyzer. It says, "Ye shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths." Directly from the Hebrew, it says, "In booths you shall dwell 7 days. Every of the native of Israel, they shall dwell in booths." So if we look at this in Israel, that is Beit Israel, and so that could be in the house of Israel or in Israel, the land. And here we have Ha-Ezrak, which is H249. It's in this from H2224 in the sense of springing up, a spontaneous growth, native, tree, or persons. So, of course, it could be native born, the tree of Israel. We are grafted into the tree of Israel. It could also be those that are born in the land as well. And as we discussed earlier, it could be we are in the wilderness, we're in the diaspora, we're not in the land, we're on our way to the land, and this was an instruction for them once they got into the land, in a remembrance of when they were in the wilderness. Today, however, I'm going to look at Sukkot from a more prophetic perspective. Are there possibly some prophetic reasons for living outside in sukkahs during the 7 days of Sukkot? In a traditionally constructed sukkah, it is built with goodly branches for a roof, which would not be weatherproof, but would have spaces where you could lay inside the sukkah at night and gaze up at the moon and the stars. We know from past programs that the sun, moon, and stars were put into the heavens as signs and to mark the seasons, or moedims, the feasts. Since the first day of Sukkot is the 15th day of the month, the moon is always supposed to be full, right? What if some year the moon is not full, or if there was a lunar eclipse or blood moon on Sukkot? We might miss that if we slept inside until we turned on the news the next day. But perhaps being told to sleep in sukkahs is an indication that we should pay close attention to any lunar eclipses or anything out of the ordinary with the moon or stars to take place during the 7 days of Sukkot. How about the stars? Well, sleeping outside under a sukkah would definitely allow you to see any significant meteor showers that you might have otherwise missed, wouldn't it? In other words, stars falling from heaven and the moon not giving its light. Could the command to sleep outside be a hint that many of the most significant prophetic signs marking the end of this age in the heavens could actually take place during Sukkot? Revelation 8:12. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and likewise the night. What if some year the moon was only 1/3 showing on the first day of Sukkot? We would certainly notice that right away if we were outside in our sukkah. If a third of the stars were thrown to the ground, that would be one major meteor shower, wouldn't it? Revelation 12:4. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Have you ever heard of the Draconid Meteor showers? Meteor showers are named for the constellations from which the falling stars or meteors seem to originate from. The Draconid Meteor shower originates from Draco the Dragon constellation. Interestingly, this meteor shower, the Draconid Meteor shower, occurs every year about October 8th through the 10th, which means many years it certainly can happen during Sukkot. And interestingly, in 1933, the Great Meteor shower of Draco the Dragon occurred over most of Europe. So you can look that up. It's a historic fact. There was a huge meteorite shower. This happened in 1933. Read the caption below this from sociohistory.wordpress.com. The 1933 and 1946 Draconids had zenithal hourly rates of thousands of meteors per hour, among the most impressive meteor storms of the 20th century. Rare outbursts in activity can occur when the Earth travels through a denser part of the cometary debris system. So there were two evidently very notable Draconid meteor showers in 1933 and 1946. Again, 1933 was the beginning of the rise of Hitler. You can look that up online. And 1946 was, of course, when Israel, or the end of the war leading up to Israel becoming a nation. So then these meteor showers of thousands falling per hour, even 500 per minute, just before Israel became a nation, could certainly match up with the scripture that says a third of the stars were drawn from the heavens and thrown to the earth just before or while the dragon was waiting for the child to be born in order to devour it. Because shortly thereafter, of course, World War II led up to the reestablishment of the nation of Israel. Let's look at a few more news articles regarding these two Draconid meteor showers. On the 5th day of Sukkot in 1933, which again was when the rise of Hitler began, we had meteoric showers are seen in Europe. Great display of falling stars is linked to Gia Sabini Zinner comet. Some villages terrified. Residents of rural areas in Portugal, stricken by fear, start praying. That was from the New York Times, October 10th, 1933, which was the 5th day of Sukkot. Last night, October 9th, 1933, a most amazing meteor shower was observed at Eskildilmur. The shower was first observed at this time by this person who drew attention to it, and we watched it for a considerable time. Literally thousands of meteors, some very bright, were observed between these times. They were observed at practically all parts of the visible sky, and their paths, if produced backwards, seemed to radiate from an area in the sky in the constellation of Draco the Dragon near Beta Draconis. And that was from netweather.tv, and that was a historic newspaper article. Then we have one from 2019, from this year. Even at their peak, which this year, 2019, occurs overnight on Tuesday, October 8th, and early morning Wednesday, October 9th, 2019, the Draconids are usually modest, generating just a few meteors per hour. This year they are in outburst and could reach rates as high as 40 to 50 per hour, but a full moon will wash out all but the brightest. So they consider 40 to 50 per hour now high, but as we can see, the shower occasionally puts on an incredible display. In 1933, for example, sky watchers in Europe saw up to 500 Draconids per minute. So we're expecting 40 to 50 per hour this year, which is high for some years. But in 1933, at the rise of Hitler, there were 500 Draconids per minute, according to Space.com skywatching columnist Joe Rao. And observers throughout the western United States saw thousands of Draconids per hour at the shower's peak in 1946, the end of the war just before Israel became a nation again. And October 9th, 1946 would have been Erev Sukkot, the eve of Sukkot. So again, keeping these huge meteorite displays coming from the Draco constellation in mind as signs in the heavens, let's again look at Revelation 8:12 through 13 that says, "The fourth messenger sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened." Revelation 12, 3 through 5, "And another sign was seen in heaven, and see a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his head, and his tail draws a third of the stars out of the heaven and throws them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth." So the woman who was about to give birth was that the Jews about to give birth to the nation of Israel again in 1946, and so before she could do that, the dragon stood before the woman, ready to devour her child as soon as it was born. So is the modern state of Israel the child of this woman that the dragon wanted to devour as soon as it was born, because he drew a third of his stars from heaven and throws them to the earth, and that happened in 1933 and then again in 1946. I don't think it's a coincidence. These were the largest displays. They're still noted today as huge displays, thousands per hour of meteors, first over Western Europe, over Europe in 1933, and then over the United States in 1946. And she bore a male child who was to shepherd all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up away to Elohim and to his throne. And I'm not sure how that fits in with this child, but like I said, it did already happen once when Yeshua was caught up. So perhaps this nation is going to blossom into a nation that actually will be preaching Torah to the nations. They are a little bit now, but they're more of a political, as we know, more of a political, more of a modern political state than they are a state preaching the word of Yah, obviously. But nonetheless, perhaps this is her infancy, and she is going to grow into a mighty nation where the Torah will go forth from her after some chastisement in the coming years. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Actually, I would expect to see this prophecy fulfilled again in the coming years leading up to our Messiah's millennial kingdom. Perhaps just before or even just after those of us still in the diaspora at this point are gathered back to the land and joined together with our brother Judah. Perhaps there will be another great Draconid or Draco the Dragon meteor shower, with thousands per hour appearing as though 1/3 of the stars are being thrown to the ground during a Sukkot, when we are supposed to be outside sleeping in our Sukkahs, peering up at the stars through the goodly branches of our roofs in the land of Israel, just before the Great Tribulation, or time of Jacob's trouble, warning us that the dragon is waiting to devour us, but also reminding us that we will be caught up to Elohim, to his throne, just as our Messiah was. Will this be letting us know that our time to rule and reign with Yeshua our Messiah is coming very near, but that first the dragon will try to devour us? It is worth noting that the Draco the Dragon meteor shower does not always happen during Sukkot. The two greatest showers, however, where it might have seemed as though 1/3 of the stars were being cast to the earth, were during or at the very beginning of Sukkot in 1933 and 1946 again. It is also worth noting that the October 8th through 10th yearly Draconid Meteor shower dates do again fall during the Sukkots of 2020 and 2022. I dare say, based upon our 80 years if due to strength signs in the heavens timeline, that if we happen to get another great Draconid meteor shower like the 1933 and 1946 Sukkot meteor showers during either the 2020 or 2022 Sukkots, we'd better be prepared for great persecution by the dragon in the very near future, and this would be another witness to this proposed Revelation timeline being correct. If you have not yet watched our video, 80 Years If Due to Strength, based upon Psalms 90, please go to the Messianic Lamb Network's YouTube channel, and you can find this video in the His Word Heals playlist. Let's take another look at Revelation 12:3 through 5, where the third of the stars are thrown from heaven. Verse 6 says, "And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of Elohim, that they should feed her there 1,260 days." So, are the stars thrown from the heavens sometime before the midpoint of the tribulation, which is where the woman flees into the wilderness, where we have a place prepared for us for 1,203 or 1,260 days, which would be the last half of the tribulation? If we continue reading, we see that Satan and a third part of the stars, or his angels, are thrown to heaven. It says, starting in verse 7, "And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven for them. And the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." This is a picture of the third of the stars as well coming down. "And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come the salvation and strength and the kingdom of our Elohim, and the power of his Messiah, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night," or our Elohim, day and night. "And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has but a short time. And when the dragon saw that he was cast out to the earth," again, that would be when he was cast down, "and he took a third of his angels with him, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the child," the man-child. So that again would be Israel, would be the woman, and that could certainly be also the reborn Israel as well. And he persecutes Israel. "And to the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly to the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent. So then the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood." Again, that's Israel. The serpent wanted to, even now, the nation of Israel, he wants to push her off into the sea. There's a flood of nations around her, of Islamic nations that have openly said they want to push her into the sea. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was angry with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keeps the commandments of Elohim and has the testimony of Messiah, Yeshua Messiah. So when the flood of Islam, which is surrounding Israel now, is swallowed up by the earth, then the dragon is angry and goes out throughout the rest of the world, seeking to destroy the remnant of her seed, which would be the believers in Yeshua, our Messiah. So, but the woman in the land is saved because the flood around her is swallowed up. And so I think that that is maybe when the next child, or the next example of the woman's child, is getting ready to be born, because she's been helped. The flood surrounding her is swallowed up by the earth. The dragon goes out throughout the rest of the world to devour or make war with the remnant of her seed, which would be the believers in Yeshua Messiah. And at that point, those that do not go back to the land, I believe, at that point where the woman is now helped and safe from the dragon, they may end up being persecuted by the dragon and devoured by the dragon, because it is Jeremiah 50 and 51 says that when the sword comes upon the land, or Babylon, let Jerusalem come to your mind where there is an escape. And so at some point there will be a time when we will want to escape back to the land of Israel once the flood of Islamic nations surrounding Israel that wants to push Israel into the sea has been swallowed up by the earth. So we would want to no longer be in Babylon, where the sword is coming, which is the dragon making war on the remnant of her seed around the earth. If you've enjoyed or discovered anything useful in this video, please like it below and share it on social media. Blessings and shalom to all of you and everyone in your homes.